What would it be like if we turned the current way we learn on its head and actually encouraged people to start out on an educational journey with the end goal in mind, with the project or the outcome as the foremost driver of the learning? That is what Andamio is asking. And in this third part interview of our 9-part series, we're talking with James from Andamio. He really challenges me to think differently about how we're producing our course content. And you'll see that the thinking process that we go through together is really outside the box. You'll enjoy this, especially if you're someone who wants to build a team, wants to create opportunities for the people that you're working with or the students that you're teaching. You'll really think differently with me as well. So let's get started. James, we're here. We made it. We did
Finally.
it. Yeah, good. It's like one of the cool things about collaborating with other people, especially in this space, is that there's so much fluctuation and that we're all building so crazy that when you get together, one conversation 1 week will change a lot from the one to the next week. And so I'm actually excited because I feel like you have added and built a bunch of stuff since I even talked to you last time. And every time I talk to you, I feel like I also am really learning something. More about what I can do, but also just generally, I think that collaborations like this, and I've said that before also, really inspire each of us to think more broadly and to push edges because we come up with a new idea through these conversations. So I'm excited to just have this one today and for people to hear it. Overall in this conversation, I'm hoping that we get to talk a little bit. So for the part of the milestone that I'm in for this proposal is really creating the plan of the workbook. So I'm writing the workbook, and the workbook, just as a refresher for people listening, is a decentralized encrypted asset, which it's sort of like an NFT on steroids. It's not an NFT, and that's an important delineation. It actually has greater functionality and a lot of other specs, and I'm sure I'll get into that with Sheila when we have our conversation, so I won't get too deep into that now. But that component adds a lot of different options for an educational environment, and it also adds a lot of considerations because we're thinking overall in the educational process, how are we assessing? How do we assess ourselves, right? As the learner, how do we help each other assess where we're at? Because learning is a process for all of us, especially in this ecosystem. And how are we going to then credential that? And who has the say about that credential? And what is the value of that credential? And then how do we put all these things together so that someone really gets immersed in something that ultimately inspires them, right? And that's my hope for this conversation, not just this conversation, but this whole project. So a lot of how I think about this is rooted in the conversations that we've had. And so I would love to just give some space for you at the beginning here to talk about who you are. Most people know who you are, but I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about maybe how you came into Cardano, and then how Andamio came to grow and how you see it growing into the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Nadia. Well, so obviously there's a high level conversation we could jump into now, but I'll keep the intro kind of brief because where I want to really get to in this conversation is that Andamio is all about learning by doing, right? Where we're really trying to put things in people's hands that allow them to take the next step towards empowering themselves and each other to start collaborating on important stuff. And so Andamio, the first features we released, made it look like a learning management platform, so people weren't wrong to think of it that way. But really, its focus is not so much on course material first, but on projects, right? The things that people are doing together. So we think about the funding for those projects, governance and decision-making on those projects. The course material is just a way of supporting people to get into that active work. So I'm leading with that just before introducing myself because I want you to have that in mind. So when I talk about where I come from, I was a high school teacher for a long time. After spending some years teaching high school math and computer science and advisory stuff and writing and really thinking holistically about how kids learn best. Like, for example, you know, kids were learning more sustainable stuff by being on a bike team and learning how to fix things than sometimes they might have been learning in the algebra classroom, right? And so we always looked for ways to really make sure people had holistic experiences, chances to work together, opportunities to get stuck. And I took all of that practice out of the classroom first into ed tech, and worked at 2 different organizations where I was supporting teachers to adopt, new technology. Right when I started teaching, the school building didn't have Wi-Fi yet, but that came online over the first few years, and we all had to figure out what to do with that. And I think teachers are still figuring out what to do with that. But at its best, what technology does is it just allows us to have new modalities, right, for how we demonstrate what we've learned, and new opportunities to collaborate with people. So as I was thinking through these things, working on some pretty amazing teams, helping teachers think about more student-centered education, I also happened to, hear about crypto and start learning about it. Cardano resonated the most. I learned how to develop on Ethereum, but I never got that excited about it. And really, when I think about, first of all, just the accounting, the UTXO-based accounting of Cardano and what that means for kind of targeted interactions. And then the governance part, which obviously we're living through that right now. We recognize how hard it is, and we have this chance to conceptualize, right? What's the right scale for people to participate in a way that maximizes impact? That's still the work ahead of us. I believe deeply that the right scale to work is on a team that's small enough that you can trust each other, right? We have to create opportunities to work together on meaningful projects, build up reputation, build up relationships, understand what we want to do and what we don't want to do. One of the things that should happen in a permissionless, decentralized environment is each of us can spend more time doing what we love to do and what we do best, right? Pushing ourselves to understand new things. So the kind of common thread between my work as a teacher and these understandings of how we build grassroots governance in a way that contributes to the fabric that you and I have talked about before. That's really where Andamio came out of. I jumped into Cardano full time when Project Catalyst started. I think it's a really important opportunity to, generate and test some hypotheses. The first few years of that work, I was really focused on Gimbal Labs, which has become a place where people can get together, learn. It's more or less focused on technical education, but that's never been the end goal. And by teaching, I met the people who I really wanted to spend the most time working with, and we started Andamio together. So there's 9 co-founders on the Andamio team, all bringing different skill sets, but aligned in terms of vision and what we're trying to accomplish. So maybe that's it. Does that raise any questions for you, or is there other background that would be helppful?
The thing that excites me the most, maybe I'll tell this story, that recently Tivo and I were, when we were in Argentina, ended up sitting next to each other at lunch, and we were talking about this whole learning, and he and I have, we go back a little bit in Catalyst, and we've done a good amount of work together and just like conversations. But I hadn't really caught up on what he was up to, and he was telling me how he was using the platform he got a group of people together, and rather than make a curriculum and teach them, they all decided that they were going to learn something together. And they wandered their way through the learning of that thing. And then through that collective knowledge of like having to each figure out pieces of it that made sense to them. And sort of like, it's one of those, see the picture of the elephant everyone has a piece of it, right? And then you see the whole picture because everyone's brought a piece to it. Then they started to teach people through bringing people into that ecosystem and sharing what they knew rather than here are the things to learn. That was really inspiring to me. And the whole concept of then those people took on roles within the ecosystem, which is sort of your concept of learn to work, right? It's like I'm coming in here, I'm learning this so that there is some meaningful application for me of this knowledge, whether the examples I've been using like in the workbook are like whether I'm like a college professor and I'm about to retire and I have some time on my hands to really learn something new. And the learning is really more about me challenging myself into a new arena. And if that arena is decentralized finance, maybe I also change a little bit about how I manage my funds. Or on the other side of it, it could be someone who really wants to become deeply versed in these concepts and the tooling itself to be able to teach other people. And those are both directions that you might put that knowledge to work, but you're not just sort of passively taking the knowledge in and not using it. And for me, I'm a very kinetic learner. I need to let you tell me about it. And about halfway through you telling me, I'm like, okay, well, I would just want to do it first, even if I mess it up, because that is part of my learning process that's really important to me. And I think that in a space like this, where everything's emerging and nothing has precedent, we need to go like, you can explain a wallet to someone, but their eyes glaze over about midway through. And you're like, well, just go to this link, start writing these down. Okay, midway through the fourth word, they're like, what am I doing? And it's like the doing of it is as valuable as the knowledge of it. And so it feels to me in my early experience of Andamio that you have really captured the components of that in this ecosystem, not just for the individual, but for the groups that form around those things that they're learning about. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Totally. I mean, I think opening the wallet is a great example, right? Like people can't understand the idea of mnemonics until they've written them down for the first time. Oh my gosh. Okay. Now I have my hands on this. What can I do with these? And of course there's the skill part, right? So if we're talking about learning to work, there's always technical skills I can pick up. But there's this other thing that happens in that moment where you're guiding somebody to open up a wallet for their first time. Maybe you've stepped into that mentorship role. We'll talk more about that later. But you two just shared a moment as well. And so separate and without diminishing the importance of learning a technical skill, like how to open a wallet, there's also the relationship that forms when you're sitting next to somebody and saying, oh, you're the person who taught me about Cardano wallets. I'm right. Never going to forget that was you, right? And once we have that relationship, and that's a pattern just everywhere, right? We don't forget the people who we learned from or with.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we do at Gimbal Labs all the time. We build teams just by giving people a chance to figure something out together. And by the time they figured it out, sure, they have new skills, but they also have a collaboration buddy to jump into some deeper project with. And I think that's fundamental to good governance in my mind, right? Mm-hmm. How can we create conditions where people will level up their relationships? It turns out that chances to figure things out, to do a project together, is one good way to do that.
It's also such a great way to really understand someone else. Like, we're all of us are in process of.
Do I want to work with you?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And
there's a little bit of
the answer is no, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also to just like diversify your skills, like even a skill like putting a budget together, like put a budget together with 3 other people who put Catalyst budgets together, and you're going to like really find out how diverse you can be because they're totally different.
When this is all over, we should really spend this money together. Yeah.
Right. So I'm hoping that my conversation with you here today, practically and pragmatically for myself, I am really trying to figure out a couple things. I'm going to tell them to you because I know that when I tell them to you, you're going to build them into how it already makes sense naturally to walk through this. So I'm going to put these out there as like my wish list. And I think that this will be shared by a lot of other people who would come to put a program together, not just a course, but the course is one thing, but the cohort and the collaborative piece is really, really important because, you know, Derek and I have been sharing this knowledge with people for a long time, and we do a lot of in-person groups, and it is really impossible to anticipate what the questions are going to be. You can't answer them all in a course. You really need an environment where people can talk it through, because someone might have an issue with whether or not they should be allowed to have money or not, right? That is a different analysis, not analysis, it's a different assessment for that person, a different reflection than someone who technically doesn't know how to set up a wallet, right? So those are two different things you might learn in a course like this, but in a cohort, you really flesh those things out, and that's different. So my first thing is I'm anticipating, this is just a functional thing, that the course is free, right? So people could come and take the course without the workbook if they want to. They could just go through. And for those people, I would like to still have demonstrated the assessment function. Like, you know, I don't like the word quiz, but I'm just going to use the word quiz for like the verification part. Like, I've watched this. You're asking me a few things that are like closed answer kind of things, yes or no, true or false, multiple choice. The answer is going to be this or not this. And that I do think has its function. And for me, for example, like if I get done reading a chapter of a book and there's 4 questions at the end and I read them and I realize that I have like glazed over all of that content, I'm probably going to read the chapter again versus otherwise I think that I read it. Yeah. So I'd like it to have just a basic option there that someone could do the course without needing the workbook. Second is the workbook is a DEA. People will need to just go mint it or get it on secondary at some point. So all of the questions and the additional content of that workbook, someone who doesn't have the workbook can't answer those questions. And so I've really been thinking about this. And the thing that I've come up with so far, which I'm hoping that you will come up with something even better than this, is that I would have the video lesson and then some kind of a just review, like a comprehension, did I get it? And then another layer of an assessment that contains the questions that they would find the origins of in the workbook. That's the only way I can think of separating it. And in writing it, it's also complicated because I have to write a set of questions that is specific to what was talked about in the video. And then for another example, like a decentralized exchange, I might have someone go do the work of connecting their wallet to an exchange, or I might have some things there that have to do with things that are explained externally to that lesson. That just both from an accessibility standpoint and from a practical standpoint would have to exist outside of the review that someone would take if they didn't have the workbook. I think I put that together as an explanation. And then the second thing is, I'm anticipating that I will probably make. I need to think about how are we going to, if I write a reflective question, people can reflect on that question, but it's not realistic for our team and the size that it is and the scope of this project that every single one of those assessments will get a review and a response. So is it just that here's the space for you to review, and if I use that space for a reflection there as that assessment, what does that mean for the overall credentialing? Do I need to definitely have something that says this person learned this and here's how we've substantiated it, therefore credential at the end, you can do X with it, right? So and then opens the questions for how does the credentialing actually work. So the last thing I'll say, and then we'll just be off to the races, is I have been thinking about maybe doing something like Tap Tools has this option that you can buy the subscription like to their plan, or you can go get an NFT that has a period of time, like a subscription period of time that expires. So you'd pay that amount, mint the thing, and then that would be over. And I could see that maybe if someone wanted that feedback for a purpose, then that could be like the course would be free. But if they wanted that level of like mentorship or consultation or whatever the word is, feedback from someone, then they could get that thing. And for that period of time, they could actually complete it that way. So these are the things that I'm really wanting to build into this, because I want to make sure that we're really showing like not only that Web3 does all the Web2 elements and more, but here's the more, and here's how those things get put together. End of transmission.
Love it. Yeah, it might take a few meetings to get through all that.
Great.
Right. So I think the best thing we can do is jump in and then check ourselves every 20 minutes or so, how we're doing on progress.
Great. So I turn the controls over to you now. I'm ready for you to tell me.
Yeah, well, would you be willing to share screen and just see what it's like to start building a course in Andamio? Because we'll see what's available so far, and then while we work through that, you can tell me what you would hope to see there.
Cool.
While you're pulling that up, yeah, we're on a version 1 release. We still don't even have fully refined UI and UX yet. We're still in the process of that. And we don't have like a public self-service portal for new customers. That's coming in about a month. So all these things are still ahead of us, but the app is live and we're onboarding people as we go. So if you just head to Enter App in the top right corner.
Great. Now, let me ask you, do I need to connect a wallet? Because I'll open a different browser.
You will eventually. Yeah, it's probably worth it to be in a browser where you can connect a wallet.
Let's do that.
And we might not even use that today, but just in case, good to have it there.
All right, resharing. All right, take 2.
So we can jump into the app.
Great.
And obviously you're presented with a login and a Connect wallet right away. The login, we're just using Discord single sign-on for now.
I think I'm already logged in on this one.
Let's see. Always.
Yes, I'm highly secure here.
We can chop this, right? You'll cut out a few parts.
I don't want anyone to miss out on the full experience.
Yeah. Auth code.
I know. Where is it? There it is. Yeah. I thought I did all this already. That's good. Okay.
Okay, so we're into the beta. You can see kind of an empty dashboard right here, and you can see the opportunity to connect your wallet. But let's ignore this for today. We're going to get to this later when we start really thinking about the learner experience.
Great.
I want to think as teachers for today, and to do that, we can jump over to Andamio Studio. All right. So here you are, right? And the first thing you see is that you haven't created any what yet? Projects, right? It's not even about courses to start. And so without even going too deep, let's just jump into this step. So what's a project, right? On Andamio, a project is it's a way to basically manage funding and a list of work to be done. For now, on this very early release, those funds are in the form of ADA, but we'll release native assets soon. So people can just fill a treasury with whatever token and distribute those for people doing stuff. And the reason we start with this in the Studio UI is this really is the point. Courses are great. Learning is great. But we don't need another platform where people can go and just fill their brains with knowledge, or, fill their web browser with Coursera credentials that they're not actually going to apply to anything. Andamio, as it rolls out, is only going to invite people to create courses if they have some reason for teaching those courses in the form of a project.
Yeah.
Right. So let's just give a placeholder for now, right? Obviously, you have an educational program in mind, but if you had to whittle it down, what's a project that this course you're building might allow people to participate in?
I mean, what could they do with this knowledge?
What do you want them to do? Yeah, after they're done, what do you hope they do?
I hope that they reimagine their financial, I always like to say financial sovereignty. I think financial sovereignty is a really important thing, but I don't know that people think about it that way. I'd love to see people like reimagine their relationship to finance. Proactively, meaning for me, if I reimagined my living situation, I might redo the interior design of my house, or I might buy a new house and sell this house, or I might change something about my lifestyle that would change that, or I might like add elements to my house that don't exist so that I could have new experiences. So if I didn't know that I had permission to do that, or I didn't feel like that was within my capacity to do that, or skills wise it seemed too hard for me, I wouldn't embark on those things. And I think someone's financial environment is very similar. They learn these certain ways of thinking about what they have, the things that they have, right? That they think they have the same habits of managing or not having a budget. They have a relationship to money that means something to them, and they have a relationship to saving and investing and storing and all of these components that create their living environment financially. And so I think the course would give them the sense that it's doable for them. Here's how to do those things. Here's some ideas for it. And here's things you could consider. And here's some things you could start with. And so in the project of reimagining that, they might do everything from get a wallet and connect it to Andamio and learn something else. Or on the other side of that, they might really change the generational direction of their family's existence. So I'm speaking as I'm thinking, actually.
Those are great, like, course outcomes, right? Like writing a budget, sharing a plan. We were talking about assignments a few minutes ago, and we will more in just a minute. Those are great examples of how somebody shows what they're learning. Now I have a budget. Now I have a 5-year plan instead of a 5-week plan, right? And one thing we always know by default is kind of mentorship, especially in this era, can always follow learning. Okay, so not to make this the only option, but can you imagine a case where maybe as somebody finishes this course, we could provide them an opportunity to earn a little something for mentoring somebody else through a similar experience?
Yeah.
Right. And so what if, for now, just to understand the flow, what if the project here is crypto fluency mentorship?
Okay. So they would have sort of as a position or as a more of a like an ecosystem. Like the
as a
mentorship is like an umbrella
right,
or as
as a role in an ecosystem.
okay.
When
Let's do that.
because
That makes sense.
and we're gonna this is gonna feel a little bit forced at this moment because we're really just trying to go through the flow here. But it's also instructive that it's pushing us, right? Once again, the goal is not to just throw courses out there and hope that it changes people, right? We have to start providing explicit opportunities for people to do things they couldn't do before now that they've learned something.
Okay. So you have community garden in that as an idea. So it's not necessarily that everyone is working on something together, but the idea of a project is bringing someone into a opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have been able to participate in.
Right. Right. And we're going to look at credentialing in just a moment and how these two things connect.
Great.
Can you imagine a future where somebody who has, your credential that they have finished the crypto fluency course, maybe now they can run a local workshop in their community, right?
Yeah.
And again, the question remains, where will the funds come from, right? And on the one side, that's an ecosystem level thing, but we recognize we're working within Cardano where there are shared funds available to apply to different kinds of work. But then also you can always mint new tokens, right? So we have opportunities to test this. And there's many things that somebody might opt into where nobody would do everything, right? I want to run a local event. Okay. I want to reach out to a politician and try to get some legislation through, right? I want to participate on social media. I want to spread the word. I want to write a blog post. There's so many things that we can introduce people to. And eventually, when you do those small things, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, relationships are forming. Right. And so even though we might not have a full picture of all the possible projects right now, I feel pretty confident that as people start colliding, as people start collaborating, the really good project ideas will come later. So we can use this one as an example, but recognizing there might be many projects in the future.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think this is a great exercise in getting an understanding of the scope of how you're thinking of project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even the very definition of it, like it could be something that lasts someone for a long period of time, or it could have a very specific start and end. Like there's a lot of flexibility to it, how you're describing.
That's right. Well, and I would say the start and end date is important. It could be a long time, but really a project should always have a start and end date, limited resources, and clear goals, right? Ideally, it solves a meaningful problem, but not always.
Great. Okay. So this mentorship might be like an opportunity to come alongside someone who is learning beginner DeFi skills and help reinforce their experiential knowledge, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And low pressure, we can come back and change anything later. So this gets us in. We can build this project. And now we have a couple of things to flesh out. Oh, not authorized. Oh, no. Okay. Well, you do have to go to your dashboard. Sorry about that. I forgot there's one thing you do have to do at this moment. And click, I guess, click the settings wheel. there and say both. And there we go. Okay, now go back to that other page and you'll be authorized. Okay. So you've got an inactive project now, right? When this thing is active, it will be minted on chain and people will be able to do all sorts of other stuff with it. But there's a few things you must do before you even have that option. And the most important one is to create a prerequisite. Now, for users of Andamio, they can explore drafting tasks if they want to, right? But that's not required. The prereq is, and this is really where we get into the connection between credentials and learning and this kind of project participation that I'm talking about.
Okay, that makes sense. So in this case, I would say they have to, well, you'll tell me, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we're going to add a course to this prerequisite.
Great.
And a prerequisite can consist of many courses. Now, if you click that button to add a course, we have a little drop-down menu, but what's in it? Nothing. We don't have any courses yet. Okay, and so this is one little UI piece that we have to make this a little better. You're stuck now, but I can tell you what to do. There should be a call to action here that takes people there. Let's just close for now. Head back to the studio. And we can build a course. It didn't refresh. Okay, so here's your course, right? And this is really what we're here to focus on today. You have this end project in mind. We know we need a prereq for a project, but this is really where I was hoping we could spend most of our time in this initial demo. Okay? Let's build the course for the first time. So you have a clear use case in mind. Let's just jump right in and talk out loud as you're working through this.
So course, now I would say, I'm just asking this so that I set it up correctly. We have a program with 4 courses technically, and each course has lessons in it. So that's the terms that I would use. So when you say course here, are there going to be 4 of those courses, or how does that look?
Certainly can be. Within the course, is there any way that the lessons are sub-organized?
Not out of necessity.
Right.
So it's like categorically, but
yeah. And how many lessons to each of those courses?
Between 8 and 14.
Yeah. So let's make one of those courses for now. And if we realize that they're better off being combined here on Andamio, we'll figure that out as we go.
Okay. So I'll just make like course 1, and then we'll do the additional ones. Let me see. Let's do course. I probably should do exactly what is in, I should do exactly what is on the site, because that will make the most sense. Give me 1 second here for this. Oh. History and emergence of decentralized finance tools. Okay. I could do a custom URL, but maybe we'll just stick with a sample image just for the.
You can always come back later. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come back later and do that, but we'll just pick this one for now.
Okay, so where are we? And what was missing? Oh no, it should be fine. Okay, So now that we're here, right, what do you see?
Modules. So module title, description, the code for it. Yeah. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. So this would be like a bucket of lessons, but jumping to the real point of this process, it's also going to be the wrapper for the thing that people are going to do, right? So you have this concept of lessons. Is there an assessment at the end of every one or after some subset of lessons?
We can build that, however.
Yeah.
The workbook is set up to offer a additional like learning method, an application of that, and a verification, which is the assessment part for each of those lessons. I can also bundle them at the end. So however makes the most sense is how we should do it.
Cool. So yeah, think about the first couple of lessons in this emergence course. What would, after how many of them would it be reasonable to ask people to demonstrate what they've learned?
Well, it's designed to pair with the lesson itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say probably not more than 3, but ideally probably the 1, because I think it's nice to have them learn the thing and they get used to that versus trying to remember what they learned 3 lessons ago.
Great. Let's play with this, because it might be the case that in the workbook, one of what you're calling a lesson would be about the same grain size as what we're calling a module.
Okay.
And we're going to be able to find out in just a minute if that's true.
Great.
So yeah, what's the first thing we cover in this course?
Okay, so the first one is just like the welcome and kind of the big picture. And this is nice because it gives space for someone to take a breath and go, okay, what am I about to do? It like introduces them to the actual like course and what's going to be in it, and gets them set for what they're going to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would probably do this, like, since there's 4 courses, I would probably do all of the modules in those courses, like the 101s, kind of like just like you have it here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that would be 101 then. Make sense?
Yep. Okay, so now you have this wrapper, and we're getting a double fire there. Can you refresh this page? This is a bug I was working on just before we started. All right, module 101, but it didn't give us the title. Okay, so yeah, we're obviously still in the early days, and I'm working feverishly to get some bugs out. But you can see the idea right here. Now we're in this first module, and what's the first thing you do? The assignment. So now we cut to the chase. Okay. Earlier in this conversation, we were talking about how do I assess, right? What will people do at the end? How do I know if a credential can be issued? That in Andamio has to be front and center. And if you look down the sequence on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that even lessons themselves are optional. This is all about doing, right? When do I teach a lesson? Oh, it's when somebody doesn't know some of the things they need to do in order to do the assignment that comes at the end. This is called backwards design. And we think that this is the right amount of kind of top-down planning that should go into education. Where's the end goal people are going to get to? Oh, at the end of this module, they're going to be able to do this assignment. This is just like good project management, right? We talk a lot about sociocracy. We use principles of kind of self-organizing or self-managing circles, right?
Mhm.
This goes hand in hand with that, right? In any kind of less hierarchical organization, whatever language you use to describe it, the most highly functioning teams are able to say very clearly where they need to get to, but they don't specify all the how up front.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what we need to do here, right? So at the end of Module 101, and maybe the scope of Module 101 will change, right? But for now, your understanding of this scope, what's the thing people are going to do to prove they've learned something at the end of this module?
This module I have is highly reflective. So they're going to learn what's coming in the course, but I wouldn't test their comprehension of that. Rather, I would give them something to think about as part of the preparation for the course. And so it's really a self-learning, self-study kind of an approach for the first one. So
Is there any sort of like community forum that people will have access to, right? Like one really easy way to do this is have people just post in some kind of public or semi-private space, just an introduction. Hey, I'm here.
mhm. Yeah. Is that a component within here? Or does it need to be like Discord or something like that?
It could be built. It's not a feature yet, right? And so, for example, if you had a Discord server, a really nice assignment for a getting started module is just come say hello.
Yeah, that's great. I think it could be that. Another thing that I had built into a previous, actually into the model workbook is that they would just do some calculations as like a warm up, which is something that not everyone does a lot of. That would be sort of the other end of the spectrum. It's not reflective at all. It's actually like if you had $100 and you bought X amount of ADA, how much ADA do you have? The price changes. How much is it worth now? Because understanding that is unfamiliar for most people. And I think it's also like a quick win. So that could go either way. And I think that really requires us to make a decision of how much of a ecosystem is there going to be of people actually coming together, and what is their expectation? Like not wanting to create an expectation that everyone would get a response or an answer, and community management and that kind of a thing is like a big consideration, because it is a lot of what our desire is, but I don't know how that will scale.
Mm-hmm.
And because I don't know that right now, I would have a hard time building that into the course, if that makes sense.
Yep. And at the end of the day, right, we're always going to follow this backwards design pattern,
Mhm.
but always backwards design for the first module in a course is kind of it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a paradox, right? Like you can't write the first module, you can't write the welcome to this course module until you've written the rest of the course, right? And so people always get stuck on the first module. Don't worry about this. And you're probably not going to issue a credential for somebody who just does the getting started module.
Uh-huh.
Right? So in any course, after you've built it out, you have a sequence of modules. You'll decide which ones somebody can actually earn a credential for on chain. And it doesn't have to be all of them.
Mm-hmm. I guess my hope for someone after they watch this and take part in it is that they would feel encouraged, and like encouraged is probably the key word. And maybe for that reason, because the video itself is very encouraging, perhaps having the experience of actually like being able to solve some of these questions would be a good additional momentum component for them. Just for their own sense of like, okay, yeah, okay, I can work through that. Like it's a very, it's exciting, I think, when you start to go, that seemed totally foreign to me, but that made sense. And so therefore I think I can embark on this at least for another reason at a minimum. So, maybe I'll just leave the question to you is like, what would your suggestion be then? I need to decide what that's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say, assuming that there's not going to be a credential for this module is good. And if we make that assumption, then the assignment can be something simple, right? Write a reflection that's private for you, right? Write a journal entry, right? Now, I hear you on the technical side. Might it be nice for people to take a little quiz that shows they have the basic math skills to jump in? Maybe, right? And we can build quizzes that will happen sometime in the next year. People want that. But I hope you can see why we're not building that first. That's most people's default setting. Right? Do the reading, take a quiz, get on with my life, forget about what I did.
Right.
We don't learn from that. Right? And so a quiz can be a very good tool if the teacher is using it, right, to adapt their instruction and figure out what to do next. But quizzes shouldn't be gatekeepers. And if we're really trying to support people to reclaim their financial sovereignty, it may be worthwhile to put it off into the future, making people feel like they're back in 9th grade. Right? Mm-hmm. Most people hated high school math and couldn't wait to get out of there. Let's not make them feel like that right away.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be either a written reflection where we just say, hey, now that you know about this course, jot down a goal and tape it to your wall. Or if there is a public forum for this course, come introduce yourself and say a word or two about what you're hoping to get out of this.
Yeah. I think that resonates. I think that makes the most sense. Great. So I need to put that in here. I'm just going to put something very general.
Yeah. And then you can write a description in the box. Students, when they're submitting evidence, will have the access to the same editor, right? You can do this now or later.
Okay.
But there's rich text. You can put video and images into this space, and so can learners, right? So when somebody submits their evidence, if you want them to submit a video or a snapshot of something, they can do that.
Okay, cool. So they could do like a different kind of media.
Yeah.
There and add that. That's really cool.
And going back to what you were saying earlier about we don't know what people don't know. Mm-hmm. That's the key reason we seek open-ended assignments, right? Mm-hmm. A quiz helps me find out whether or not people can answer those questions about things that I can predict that I need to assess, but it doesn't provide me a space to capture their surprising, holes in their knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. Open-ended does. And that's really why we want to emphasize this by focusing on this. I mean, you can see, right, just examples below. Really, any assignment, we just want to make sure it's creating evidence of some kind. Right? People should be doing something that produces some artifact.
This is also a really, it's a very thoughtful format for a course like ours or a series of courses, because a lot of people might not, like, I'm anticipating that people will take this course who are brand new to the whole idea. And some people, like a lot of people that I've talked to in doing this project, are like, I think I need that for myself. Like they might have great knowledge in some area, which we all do. Like if you needed me to code something tomorrow, I would have tremendous difficulty doing that. And I would need that course that you have for that and all of the support. And the financial piece can be similar, even though we're in this space that is heavily about financial sovereignty. Not everyone feels comfortable with those concepts. And so it will be great for people who don't need to really think about a wallet to be able to quickly, well, it's maybe not a great example, but some people who don't need the initial learning components about like the history and the emergence of blockchain and that kind of stuff, that's second nature to them.
Bingo.
They can go right through this section and go right into the places where
I'm not even going to read the lessons. I'm already on board with this. Yeah. And then, I mean, once you start having fun with assignments, the sky's the limits, right? Like, think, what if the assignment for this first thing wasn't so much like a quick little reflection, but what if it was like, what are the top five, like, go on Reddit and post the top 5 reasons you're embarrassed to be thinking about crypto right now, you know, like just anything. And we should be real. This should feel like a human experience. We should be asked to do something that we would enjoy, have fun doing anyway, right?
Yeah. I think some good memes will come out of that, probably.
Right? Make a meme about go do a Google search, find the meme that best describes your relationship to money, and post it as the assignment evidence here. Right? Imagine then you as the teacher, you're not looking at quiz results. You're looking at a list of memes that come through. Now you can grab all those, make a gallery of it, and imagine looking at those 20 memes at once. Now you have a public artifact that can be used to kind of communicate out. Hey, people coming into this course, here's their self-assessment of their financial situation expressed as memes.
I love it, actually.
Think about that compared to everybody doing a quiz and kind of keeping to themselves.
Yeah. And I think it'd be valuable to the space overall to have the before and after, like the before and after sense of like, why are you here? And what's meaningful to you? Like, why are you here? And are you really going to do this? And if you're going to do it, like, what is the motivation that you're really doing it? Why are you going to stay? And to see the before and after picture, I think the before and after for something like this is extremely telling for the person, but also we have ideas based on our experience in this ecosystem about why people are here. And I bet that they are really, really different, but also have threads of similarity that we can't necessarily parse out because we're not asking those questions at times where people could answer similarly. Yeah. Okay, so let's say I have more to think about with this.
We can have fun with this, and you're going to repeat this process for each module that gets built. You'll build up your understanding of what a module is by just trying to create a few. But let's just run through the other steps real quick, right? Okay, so where did we start? We started with the concept of a project, and that felt a little artificial because you already have a course in mind. That's fine, but just to keep that flow in mind. The project needs a prerequisite. If somebody's going to contribute or be a part of this project, what are some things they have to know in advance? That's what we encapsulate in a course. Now we're building a course, and the first thing we did is we built a module and the end assignment for that module. We're going to keep working backwards. So now we get into the details. Now that you have an assignment in mind, what's the list of I can statements that people are going to be able to say, yes, I can to after completing this module?
Okay, I think ride a bike and stop safely. I need that for my teenage son. So I would say in this one, I can yeah, it's a challenging one because it really is more of an introduction, but I would say it's things like I can imagine myself completing this course. I can imagine myself helping other people in the future. Like I think it would probably because there's no because there's no real specific learning goal for this course other than to prepare them. It would be things that come out of feeling prepared to start.
Right. And that's right. Always, when every course I've facilitated the creation of, we always get stuck writing the learning targets for the first module. Right? Writing the learning targets for later modules is easy because they're specific. We're getting into it. So yeah, we don't need to take too long on this, but like, I like that. I can, what about just like, I can imagine my financial future.
Cool.
Imagine is a good active verb. And then it's common enough to include like some kind of throwaway learning target, right? Like I know what this course is about and where to get help. Okay. Oh, is that button not working?
Not working.
Okay. Put the cursor inside the box again and just press enter. No? Oh, well, that's a bug. Can you refresh this page one time? I don't know.
Yeah.
Working a minute ago. You can enter? No?
Yeah. Let's do it. And I'll hit enter first and I hit the checkbox and see if that changes anything.
No. Well, it's too bad. All right, so we're mid demo. Maybe we could just talk through the rest. I'll fix this and we'll pick it up here next session.
Yeah, each of our lessons are videos. And I think I think this is a great place to stop actually, because this makes me really think differently. It's going to reconstruct how I'm thinking about this workbook. And it actually is very helpful because we've thought about it from one direction and now I'm going to think about it from the other direction. And I think it will really really make the assessments a lot stronger than they would have been if I was thinking of it from one direction. So
you have a whole bunch of content that's ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. And now we refashion it a little bit in terms of where it's going to get people.
And he really, like Derek, as he put the curriculum together and taught it, he's not trying to teach you concepts. He's trying to get you to do stuff because it is the participation that is valuable here.
Bingo.
It's I think as valuable to accomplish the connecting your wallet to Clarity DAO and figuring out what the heck is going on with governance in there as it is to figure out money lending and borrowing. In fact, it might be way more valuable in your life to just take that step and go do it. And so to learn about governance is not as valuable as to go do the governance piece. And because it's already taught that way, it's going to be really interesting to do this from the other direction. And I guess my last question for you then would be, because I'm going to write the rest of these components, is when I go into this assignment piece, what if I want to ask questions that have yes or no answers? Like what's the spectrum of things that I can do in an assessment? And I know that I'm in assignment here.
Oh, totally. You can prompt the learner to enter anything into the open-ended space. Right. Okay. So an assignment could just be a question or two, and it's write your answers to these questions.
And in the future, people will have different levels. Some of them will just be reflected upon and no one else will read them. But some of them you'll have an instructor who's in there like really helping you answer those questions.
Well, so here's the thing. It's at the end of the day, the only reason an assignment exists, like the only reason to assess an assignment is that it's being used to create a credential. Mm-hmm. If there's no credential, we don't need to grade anything, right? And if people want to get feedback on their work, that's a service that you can offer. That's wonderful, right? But really, when you create a course in Andamio, you are taking on the responsibility of becoming a credentialing authority.
Mm-hmm.
right? So you need to make sure that assignments provide you enough evidence to say, yeah, based on what I've seen, this person has these learning targets. World, do with that what you will. And that's where the emergent value of these credentials will come from. Some of them will never be used for anything. Others, it'll turn out that somebody holding that credential because they did this assignment in this course will become very valuable and will unlock doors for people. And the value of that can only be from actual usage.
Mm-hmm.
What's nice is that when you were just talking about these other things coming up, you named a whole bunch of assignments, right? Very naturally. And my goal is to help people understand this is not a hoop to jump through. This is a way to capture the way that you're already thinking when you're at ease, right? What do we need people to do? Go into Clarity DAO, figure it out. That's an assignment, right? What do we need people to do? Join this workshop and share a bit about themselves, right? And if people do these things, they're actually really easy to assess. Did somebody participate over here in Clarity? Did somebody join us in a session and share their 2 cents, right? Is that worth a credential? You decide.
What is the trigger that they get the credential?
You approving it.
Okay.
Right. And this is where you're exactly right. For 1,000 people, this becomes inefficient. That's by design, right? We're not here to just be pumping out credentials that could have been automated. Web 2 tools can do that, right? But here we have the opportunity to say, look, if you have a credential on this Andamio protocol, it's only because somebody attested to you having done something. That is inefficient by nature, but because it's inefficient, it's more valuable. Kind of like minting a Bitcoin block, right? Because of that inefficiency, now once it does exist, I can make greater claims about what it represents and how it might be used. Now, in order to scale, we probably want to train up some other course facilitators, people who can vouch for other people's credentials. But the good news is that creates a built-in contribution opportunity. And I always feel like I'm describing a pyramid scheme when I do this, but that's kind of what we need. We need a pyramid scheme focused on education and dissemination of knowledge, right? So that's one thing you have the chance to create. What's the first thing somebody can do with a Plutus project-based learning credential over at Gimbal Labs? Oh, they can contribute back to the course. They can make it better for the next people who learn in it, right? They can facilitate a live coding session, right? That's not the be all end all, but it's a really nice first chance to contribute back, right? And to build up again that governance fabric that's really the goal of all of this.
A lot of it also is how someone desires to learn. It's very similar to when we have DeFi conversations. There's some people who are going to go and become exactly like we did from this process of just desiring to know it for the purpose of using it and going through like the highly disgruntling and desperately less information available 6 years ago than there were now. You're going to go through that because you're really motivated for that thing, and you really have a desire to accomplish the assignment which life is giving you. Life is giving you the assignment. And then on the other side of that, there's people who are like, well, can you just do it for me? Like, I want that outcome, but I don't really want to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the same as someone who wants to mow their lawn and someone who wants to have someone mow their lawn. It's like, it's your preference for how you want to spend your time and what you want to do with it and how you want to take in knowledge. And so there's a real engagement piece in this by design that is going to create a communal experience because of the very purpose of us coming together to do anything, right? So we can't come together to do anything unless we all are equipped in some way for at least the very basic ways that we can participate to start. And then, can you carry a shovel is the beginning of the garden example. And then eventually you have master gardeners in there who are going to teach that shovel carrier how to, and so will the garden.
Right.
Yeah.
And so by emphasizing that part, and those people who really want to grab the shovel and do something with it are, I think for the long term, going to still be the minority of any people who come and take a look at a course, right? Yeah. For any number of reasons. And most people, if you look at a few courses, you're going to be a passive observer of most of the courses you look at, but some subset of them will be the ones that you deeply engage in, right? So that expectation or that planning for higher engagement is by no means to say that everybody will take it up, but it's just essential to have that opportunity. And the good news is twofold. One, once the course exists, sure, right here, we're going through the backwards design process. What's the assignment people are going to do? Okay, what are the learning goals that people are demonstrating there? Finally, I can write some lessons. That's where I thought I was going to start. And wait, I write the intro last? Yes, you do write the intro last. You never think about the first words you're going to say until you know the whole story first, right? Like that's 100% the best way. You don't sit down and write an introduction, right? Now, after you have all that, however, the lessons are publicly visible. And anybody who wants to just passively consume that content, they still can. They don't even have to log in for that part. But if they do want the participatory piece, it's there waiting for them.
I have more questions than I started with. And that, I think, is as it should be when you're doing something like this. So I've reached a state of appreciation yet again.
What's the juiciest one to use as a cliffhanger?
I would love to see, I'd probably just pick your brain about, you've been thinking about this so in depth. So now I'm absorbing the fundamentals of how you have this structured, which is new to me every time we talk about it, even though we're talking about these concepts, but now you're showing them to me in an environment where you can actually put them into action. But my questions would always be more so who are some of the, in the long term, who are some of the organizations or entities or individuals, or what do you think people are going to use this for who really want to use every last bit of it?
This is a more effective and less costly way to build teams and to build companies. So who we're selling to are organizations who are pissed off about their HR functions. Okay. Along the way, if people have course material to teach, it'll accommodate that, right? But anybody who comes with the course material first, for example, you've got a whole book already, right? We are going to ask you to just think about, okay, fine. If there's a book, that's great, but what are people going to do? And so even if there isn't that organizational output at the end, you're actually, by creating assignments, you're sowing the seeds for new organizations to spring up sometime in the future. So that's really the thing. And this really is I won't, business is too reductive a word, because it's not just about businesses, right? Sure. It's about community organizations, whatever, what we're doing with Ada.eco. This is any word you use for ways people come together to tackle problems and complete projects, organizations, businesses, cooperatives, communities, etc. That's who we're really looking at. And we want to work with the people who say, I have a clear idea of what I want to accomplish if only I could find the people to join my team.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best way to do it. Traditional HR cannot compete with this. Locked down, right? Training programs that are really expensive and make people make organizational leaders afraid of firing somebody because it's less costly to keep a bad fit on the team than it is to try to replace them, right? This is the solution to that, right? We talk about the projects we want to do. We talk about what people need to know. We give them a chance to try, and when the collaboration flourishes, it's obvious, and we go from there.
I'm plugging my computer and my computer is dying. It feels to me like when you mentioned the book, and the book is how we started talking about Andamio. And actually, that conversation is a lot of what caused the proposal, because I went, wait, okay, well, if we did this, the book is stories. I think I'm really interested in ethnography, in the stories of how we come to do these things together. And that, I think, is part of what unites us all in Cardano. It's a big piece. It's like there's some story that resonated with us so much about something that we wanted resolved so much, whatever it was, that we're like, wait a minute, you guys are doing this in here? And then we met some other people, and those people were the reason that we stayed. As much as it is because you need community as much as you need a purpose. Sometimes one more than the other. And the book for us was writing there was a loneliness to finding this, because you are just desiring for everyone to know and be as excited as you are. And it's a lot to take in. And so the book was like, here's the stories about our story, because our story is somewhat everyone's story in here. And I'm hoping that people read that and go, wait, I've been trying to figure out this thing with my identity for a long time. And when you told that story about how it took you 3 months to get your name changed after you got married because you did the things in the wrong order and all the, I never really thought about third parties, I never thought about intermediaries. The stories tell those things. And then when you come in here and you meet other people and they not only resonate with those stories, but they have something you can do about it. That is, I think, very soul-feeding. I think it's very soul-feeding. And I think that this is that. And you're also you're doing the same thing that someone has to do when they understand centralization, decentralization. They're like, wait a minute. But so there's no, okay, well, how does this is that same kind of thing for learning is, I know you've always done it this way, but if you do it this way, then you get these things out of that process. And that's very different and meaningful. Yeah. So I'm excited, even though I'm challenged.
Brilliant. Oh, thanks for saying that. No, that's beautiful. That's it.
Yeah. I think we did it. I think we did it for today, because I'm at my challenge capacity, which is also a great place for me to be.
You're right on the edge of what we call your zone of proximal development.
I'll take it.
It's a great, look up that term. We'll have to publish a blog post about that. But cool. I got some bugs to fix. I don't know why SLTs weren't saving, so I'll push a fix for that by the end of today. And let's pick it up when you're ready.
Pick it up next time. Yeah, I'll be back with more, and I'm sure people will be excited to hear the next steps.
Can't wait.